We are so proud to be a founding partner of Women Rule with Politico and Google, and we are absolutely thrilled to be in LA. It also gave me the excuse to come out and see my son who's out here, so it's like, yeah, double. Politico has done an amazing job this year of expanding the program and including more cities, podcasts, original contents, and newsletters. It's a really dynamic community, and by being here today, now you're our charter members in Los Angeles, so welcome to the Women Rule community. So how is it that the feminist utopia that I envisioned as a young girl is still elusive? It's a question that I became fixated on for the last 3 years since joining the Tory Burch Foundation. After a long career fighting AIDS and poverty, I settled back where I began and to work on creating equality for women and specifically for women entrepreneurs. So when I came into the job, the systematic impediments for women entrepreneurs were immediately obvious. It's clearly harder to access capital, and oftentimes career pivots left education gaps. But I really felt like we weren't getting to the heart of the problem. And then Tory told me a story about an aha moment she had had 14 years earlier. She was being interviewed by the New York Times, and the reporter asked her if she was ambitious. And she bristled and said, no, I don't like that word. So the next day, a girlfriend called, thank God for girlfriends, and said, great interview, but why aren't you owning your ambition? And she was like, oh. And she hasn't shied away from the word since, that's for sure. And it got her also thinking about the phrase embrace ambition and using that as a call to action. So fast forward to last year, we launched the Embrace Ambition campaign, starting with that awesome video you saw, to break down the double standard around ambition in women. Unbelievably, ambition in women is still often seen as a negative and celebrated in men. And I'm sure most of us could tell stories about our ambition being undermined or undermining it ourselves. But especially for women entrepreneurs, try pitching your company or getting a loan with your ambition tied behind your back. It's not going to happen. So the Embrace Ambition campaign was born, and honestly, the response blew us away. We were not really even prepared for it. 98% of the world's countries participated. 300 plus major celebrities and influencers posted on social media. It was on billboards from Times Square to here in Hollywood, and it was all over TV and the press. And that's when we had our second aha moment. We were like, what if the answer to the question of why there's been so little progress in the last 50 years is due in large measure to stereotypes and everything that men and women unconsciously do to perpetuate them. So we really have come to believe that until we deal with the outmoded behaviors, mindsets, and unconscious bias that is part of our culture, we will never have a level playing field in our workplaces or in life. Yes, we absolutely need better laws to achieve women's equality and advance human rights. But to be truly successful, we must change the culture starting from childhood and create new norms. You may be surprised at the extent of how we all subliminally absorb biases. We internalize ideas from our socialization. If you hear something, see something, do something over and over, it becomes the norm. There was a recent study that was written up in the New York Times, and adults, children, men, women were asked to draw a leader, and the vast majority drew a man, including women. The shortcuts in our brain are just programmed to automatically typecast people. How often do we catch ourselves, or not, when we unconsciously think of a crying boy as weak, or a blonde as an airhead, or a black man as a threat, or an Italian guy as a gangster? There's so many automatic reactions to people. There are hundreds of these toxic stereotypes, but the good news is once we identify and name them, like we did with ambition, You can't help but be aware of them, and that's when you can change them, when you're aware of them. It's hard work. You need to dig deep and question your own behaviors. Then we need to work together to have tough conversations, not only about gender, but also about race and class. Half of all marginalized populations are women, meaning the issues particular to women of color, LGBTQ women, women in poverty, and others need to be all of our issues. There is no us and them in the definition of equality. We're in this together. And women need to do this with men. Men can and should be in our partners in creating new cultural paradigms, not only for the women in their lives, but for themselves and for their sons. Men too are harmed by a patriarchal culture. The bottom line is, if you have a brain, you have biases, because that's what brains do. It doesn't make you a bad person, it makes you human. And because you're human, you can and should do something about it. When you sat down, I hope and think that there was some sheets about how to counter unconscious bias as an individual, as an employer, and as an employee. This was a tool we created for a conference we did in April about confronting stereotypes and dealing with unconscious bias. That tool is also on the Tory Burch Foundation website, and there is additionally, the complete film of the day is there, and there's some amazing content, and I encourage you to take a look. Two of the best ways to counter stereotypes are through storytelling and being publicly authentic. That's why I'm so thrilled to moderate a discussion about changing the narrative with the three women about to come on stage. Please welcome Gina Ortiz-Jones, Crystal McCrary, and Vera Santamaria.